Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Louise.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good.
It's
I'm
pouring
good.
rain where I am, so
I
it's
know.
always nice. Summer rain is always nice.
I love that actually. I love the summer rain. The whole country, it's so hot. It's
I
crazy.
know. Crazy.
Well, so here we are again. American Baby, Gabrielle Glaser. For those following along, we are on chapter 10, The Right
Oh,
Future.
yes. And before
Mm,
we dive into this, we still are taking votes from our Patreons for books to read for our next season. So far we've got The Girls Who Went Away. It is kind of the same era as what we're reading, so we are open to hearing your ideas. So please send them. If you are a Patreon, we're going to take your vote and tally them up. Also, if you want to become a Patreon so you can vote, you can find us on Patreon.
exactly. You can
Yeah.
vote and help us out.
Yes, exactly. It continues to help support the podcast too.
It
That
does.
by becoming a Patreon, you are supporting us reaching more adoptees, which is our mission. So
It's
there
our
you go.
mission. Good
Back to the
plug.
cheery book.
Sorry, Gabrielle, it's not that cheery. All right. So the right future. This was actually, I thought it's a shorter chapter. I really liked it because I think this is the kind of stuff I wish non-adoptees would read.
Yes, I do too.
Because adoptees know this inherently, but I feel like it's it's about the history of adoption and where we are. So the right future. How do you want to start it? I'm just kind of overwhelmed by the things I learn in this book.
I know. Well, this is the first thing that I'm just looking at right now was George and Margaret,
Mhm.
who this book is about or focused on. There's a picture of Margaret on her 19th birthday with a beagle puppy that George got her after her second childless Mother's Day. So after she had
Mhm.
have given up, was
Yeah.
forced to give up her baby.
Yeah. It's so heartbreaking. The 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 part I was thinking was interesting to me was how there was some sort of moral flaw thought about in the
Right.
country with
Oh
the
my
mothers.
gosh.
I mean, we
Oh,
kind of know that, but it was actually like a a thing. Like it was actually thought about like the new here, I'm just going to read this little part on page 133. The new trend in closed adoptions promoted by the agencies was also consistent with the prevailing view of women who became pregnant out of wedlock. They had morally transgressed and needed to be punished by losing contacts with their sons and daughters forever. The principles of eugenics, still embraced by doctors trained in the 20s and 30s, offered a scientific underpinning for this argument. Many believe that unmarried women who became pregnant before marriage had a moral flaw that made them unfit to raise children. They could not control their sexual impulses.
just it's so stupefying. And the punishment being you lose your children.
Yeah. And it was widely
It's
accepted.
so
It's not,
severe.
I was thinking about it in like a broader sense. Like there's people out there promoting all this, the Louise Wise agency, for one, many adoption agencies, if not all of them, the moral compass. But like regular people, I don't think went into it thinking we're going to punish, like people adopting or people giving up. But that's the tone you're having in the country. So it's kind of like, oh, well, this is better. You can tell yourself a lot of things in life to make yourself feel better. So if the country's telling you something, the overall message is telling you something, everyone's like, oh, this is better for these babies. So if people had questions,
Well, I
oh,
mean, I think that's where,
mm-hmm,
growing up with the narrative of like you were so lucky,
yeah,
which the implication being to have escaped, that hellish life with that,
it would
slut
have
of
been
a mother
hell.
or whatever, assumptions that all the birth mothers were addicts or morally bankrupt or
For
anything.
sure, teenagers that were dirt poor and
Hmm.
couldn't raise you, that it's not, she gives a lot of examples of babies in here where the mothers coaxed into giving them up, and they were just really told what a better life, you can't provide this, the lies about who they're going to, and then they'd find out years later when they found them, none of it was true.
Right. I highlighted nowhere did the researchers entertain the possibility that both partners might enjoy sex or that the pregnancies, like Margaret's and so many scores of others, had been accidental.
Yeah.
And then
I
in
mean,
the as late as the 1960s, some adoption officials told mothers their babies had died.
Oh, that part. Yeah. Well, especially in
Which
the
we've had some guests
we
where I think
have,
their birth mothers have said that.
yeah, where they assume they had died, took the baby away, and oh, your baby died. Okay.
The other thing that was so shocking too was deliberately, so some women, they would took babies when women were in psychiatric wards, and
Yes.
then the agency would omit that from the records that,
Yeah.
so there's possible mental illness inherited,
That
and
was
that's never
crazy.
revealed.
Never revealed. They actually just changed it all around and made some story up. And they said there was something about playing God. Oh, here's an actual person that worked in every time we place a child for adoption, we feel like we're playing God, a New York State child welfare official said in 1960, with all the hazards of playing God. They're actually on record saying,
Yeah,
and they knew it. There was a woman who worked at it wasn't Louise Wise, it was the home that she went to, Margaret Lakeview,
right.
who said it was, I mean, who actually admitted after years of working there in an interview, it was human horrible. Like, what did she call it? She called it something, but she knew what was happening inherently with these mothers and children. But that wasn't the language they were preached, right?
No. And here's just because this is my new thing
Mm-hmm.
I want to do is highlight the names of these horrible men that perpetuated
Yes.
this and call people in. There was a man named Edmund Pollock of
Yeah.
NYU who declared that the women, the birth mothers, were dominant, aggressive, narcissistic, and bitterly hospitable. It would have been hard for Pollock to more completely pathologize his 35 subjects who were unaware they were being studied as part of a research project. Edmund Pollock. He should be ashamed. I hope he's
Sick ticket.
shamed in his death.
I do too. I do too. There was I don't know, just the whole thing, like all the mothers, just like she circles back how Margaret and George, there's other mothers who tried to come back and get their babies. And over a 2-year period, one baby that had an African American father, Black father, was really told a bunch of lies. And that child was not being put in a home. He was in foster care when he could have
Right.
been cared for by the boyfriend and the mother.
Yes, yes. So
And
many cases of that.
that circled back to Margaret and George, 2 years staying together as a couple trying. I mean,
Trying to get their baby back. Their baby.
yeah. And nowadays, you can't fathom at 19 or 20 that you wouldn't have these rights, but they literally didn't have the rights. It's shocking to me, actually.
It
Even though we
really
know
is.
it's upsetting.
Well, here's yeah, that you're talking about the woman that you're talking about. She was brought before Justine Wise Pollier, the judge who was also the president of Louise Wise Services.
Mm,
Few, it seems, objected to the obvious conflict of interest of a family court judge who made rulings on the clients her agency served.
come on.
Sounds like a familiar situation going on currently in our
Yeah. A little
system.
bit. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Whew. Well, that brings us basically to the end of the chapter. And
Yeah.
next week's chapter called Childless Mother.
Oh,
Yeah, that's going to be a
it's gonna be
very sad.
it's all sad. I'm glad we're reading it in sections because I'm able to absorb it, not get
Mhm.
like really think about each section and not get overwhelmed. Sometimes when you're seeing something, if it's too much at once, you're just depressed, right? And this
Yes.
kind of is like, okay, let me think about this section of it. Well, we have a great guest coming up.
Yes, as always,
Yeah.
we have a great guest.
And don't forget to subscribe and download.
Yes,
Thanks,
every
everyone.
week.
Mhm.
Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon.